Hey, music fans, Happy New Year 2025. Welcome back to Soundlab Studios. Today, Jacob Martin and I are going to be continuing our series through Genesis. We have now entered a new year, and Genesis have entered a new decade. Last we saw them was in the 80s, and now Genesis has entered the 90s for We Can't Dance. Jacob, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good tonight. Been a great new year so far, and it's good to be back on your channel to talk about some Genesis and more than likely their last good album.
I hear nothing but bad things about the next album, but we'll find out. I'm excited to talk about this one. Real quick, I'm going to give some background information.
Background information.
Okay, so there's really not a whole lot of background information about this album. After releasing Invisible Touch, as you can imagine, Genesis went from being famous to crazy famous. Especially since Phil Collins was having a big solo career at this time. In between Invisible Touch, and this album, he had released another really big album called But Seriously. That was a really big album for him. Uh, Invisible Touch and that really skyrocketed Phil Collins's career as a solo artist, and so you had Genesis fans, you had people who were on board because Phil Collins was really big at this time. So this was a very highly anticipated album. It came out was 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91. This came out 5 years after the last album. So you had to wait 5 years after Invisible Touch to get this. Um, but as I expected, it sold a lot. This is Genesis's second best-selling album after, of course, you guessed it, Invisible Touch.
I was curious how this would live up compared to how big and awesome of an album Invisible Touch was. I don't think it hits the heights of the last album. I do have a couple of issues with this album, but I still think there's a lot of good highs on this album. I think as far as this being the last Genesis album with Phil Collins on it, I think it's a pretty good way to end on. There's some really good songs on here. It's hard comparing it with the last album because the last album was such a fantastic Genesis album, but in its own right, I thought We Can't Dance was still really good.
I like it as well. I feel this one is nowadays kind of underrated. I mean, back in the day it sold a lot of money, but nowadays people kind of throw this one aside and say it's one of their worst albums when there's a lot, not only has it got some good hits on here, but there's also a lot of really good hidden gems. And also, like for the prog snobs, there's at least two songs on here that you could say are kind of more in their old style, even though it still is kind of them evolving at this time. Genesis never really stuck to one particular sound. All of their albums sound very different from each other. Like even, I mean, Nursery Crime and Foxtrot are very similar, but then Selling England by the Pound and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway get different. Of course, Trick of the Tail, and Wind and Weather are kind of similar, but then Duke, and then there were three. Abacab, like they're always trying new stuff. So I'm excited to get to talk about this one because most of the things that I hear about this album is just hate talk, and I'm actually going to be very positive about this album.
Well, that's two. I think it's a good album. So
All
two
right.
people praising this album.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first track. The first track is No Son of Mine.
All right. So right off the bat, it opens with this really cool little tone to it. I don't know what the effect is, but it's like this cool little type sound. And it's like, okay, I don't know what we're going getting into, but I am intrigued. There's some really good storytelling in the song. Kind of a sad story too, because it's about a abusive father and the child running away from home, and then he comes back because he can't really do much because he's a child on his own, and when he comes back, the dad just disowns him, and you get to that chorus, "You're no son of mine." I'm like, you know, deep down, this is a really really sad song. I guess is I wonder if around this time Phil Collins was wanting to do more songs addressing topical issues because you mentioned the But Seriously album, the big hit on
Yeah,
that.
Another Day
I
in
know that in
Paradise.
Paradise he addressed homelessness.
I think it's because, I know we're planning on covering Phil Collins at some point, but of course, Phil Collins was labeled as the cheesy 80s ballad guy because of making songs like One More Night, Susudio, even like In the Air Tonight. People thought he was just the cheesy 80s ballad guy with songs about nothing. And so, But Seriously, and with this album here, it kind of seems like, because even in the album title, But Seriously, Phil Collins was wanting to make songs that were more, I guess, serious.
Yeah, and you really see that right off the bat in this first song, and I thought this was a really good song. Of course, the drumming and all of these songs are outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
Still seeing the collaborative effort of the band. Um, I don't know where I'd rank this one on. It's not in my top five. I want to put this in my top five because I especially love the chorus of the song, but my top five is really good. So right now I'm going to say this one's an honorable mention.
This was also the first single that was released from this album.
Oh, wow.
So, good choice. Funny enough, they particularly pushed this as the first single because they knew their producers would want to put "I Can't Dance" as the first single, and they really kind of promoted this one because they wanted a longer song to be their single, especially after these people are accusing them of selling out with Invisible Touch. So I thought that was kind of interesting that this is the song they wanted to put out as the first single because it is kind of long for a single, but it's still super catchy. First off, I should have mentioned this probably. Gone are the record days. We're in the CD era now.
Yeah.
Here's the CD. I was listening to that on the CD earlier. But anyway, start out with this really ominous sound of like a clock ticking. It's like doop 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 doop, and then the synthesizer comes in. Tony Banks, man, he's always really good with creating soundscapes. And then it sounds like Mike Rutherford is making elephant noises with his guitar or something. Like, I'm not even sure that's what that is, but it sounds kind of like that's what he's doing. Um, but then Phil Collins starts getting that drumming in there. You get his signature drum sound on this song. Huge chorus. You're no son of mine. Which is interesting because the pre-chorus to this song is so long, it's almost like it could be a chorus in and of itself. They say that time is a healer. Do, 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 do. Like that kind of goes on for a while before eventually, and then you get to like the he sat me down and talked to me. Like this song is a very weird structure. There's almost like a verse, pre-chorus A, pre-chorus B, and then chorus, which is really interesting. Uh, like I don't know if I can think of another song that has this similar song format. But I love the line that I was talking about earlier where he goes, "They say that time is a healer," because the chord that they play there is exactly the one that you wouldn't think they would play. Like it really kind of just subverts your expectations. I already talked about the chorus. No son of mine. Really catchy. This is a perfect way to start out this album. It's really giving you a hint at kind of the sound that this album is going to have, and a good way of introducing the rest of the songs. Okay, now we're on track number two. Jesus, He Knows Me.
All right. So this song is crazy. This is probably one of the best rhythms of any song on this album. I would say this is the biggest earworm.
Yes.
And I want to say it, this song is hilarious in all the right ways. So I think of two Genesis songs that are really brilliant satires. You have Illegal Alien off of the self-titled album. Then you get something like Jesus He Knows Me, and they really went there on this one because they tackled something that I could see some people taking the wrong way and say it's an offensive song. Like I could see some saying, "Oh, they're mocking religion in this song. I'm like, no, they're mocking false religion because we're dealing with televangelists. And I'm saying this with all honesty as somebody who is in preaching school right now. A lot of these televangelists are con artists.
Yeah.
Uh, they're scamming people their money. They're claiming that Jesus is talking to them to get all this money together so he to try to fund his wealthy empire when he's just scamming people. That's all it is. And Phil Collins saw past all that phony facade and all that. I don't know what his views are on God and religion and stuff like that, but he wrote a funny song about it. And I'm glad he did because I think this song's awesome. I love the chorus because Jesus, he knows me. I love the guitar work. The drumming on here is great. Man, I love this song. Like everything about this song is hilarious. Like the satire, even talking about like Jesus is whispering in my ear and stuff like that. I'm like, he doesn't do that today. You read the Bible to get what you need to know about God and the church and everything like that. So, man, this song is amazing. This one's up there in my top five. I'll save it where it's placed on my ranking, but this one's up there.
So here we have the funny song. It's like on the Genesis albums, there's always the funny song, and here it is for this one. I should also point out around this time, MTV is huge, so Genesis has a lot of music videos coming out around this time. A lot of their music videos are really good. The video for this one is really funny because it's Phil Collins becoming the televangelist in the video. And like he has like slicked back hair and wears like this hokey suit. And he even like does stuff like he appears on like a TV and is like, touch the screen if you want to be healed. Send me your money right away. You have to see it. It's hilarious.
Oh man, I'd probably be laughing my butt off watching
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because because then it shows him behind the scenes and he's doing all this bad stuff and it's like pretty much just like illustrating the lyrics of the song. But it's like, why is Phil Collins pretending to be a televangelist so funny? Um, why did also another question, why do the drums have to go so hard on this song? I don't know what it is, but Phil Collins is he's just playing the drums so well on this one. Um, as soon as you get that little keyboard thing from Tony Banks at the beginning, that it just goes right in. It's one of the most honestly one of the most driving songs on the album, even though we have a song literally called Driving the Last Spike. This is probably the most driving song on the album with its drum beat. Jacob just talked a lot about the lyrics, very satirical. Some of them are like, oh my gosh, Phil, you actually just went there. Like, especially when he's like, I've always got my wife beside me, but she doesn't know about my girlfriend or the guy I met last night. Like, that insinuates you have a girlfriend and you were seeing a drug dealer. It's like, this guy's two-faced. He's just using all your money. Very funny satire. It's a great song. This is another one of the singles. There's a lot of singles on this album. Um, this is around the time where they were doing like CD singles, where you would buy a CD that just had like one or two songs on it. But great song. We are now going to get to our third track, Driving the Last Spike.
I don't know how popular of a take this is. I didn't really care for this one. This was one of two songs I was not really that big a fan of. Now, I think this is probably one of the more proggier songs on the album. There's two songs on this album that are 10 minutes long. One song that we'll dive into, the other one, I really like that one, but we'll save that when we get there. This one, I'm like, do we really need two 10-minute long songs on the album? Because that really messes with the length of this album. Like, even though there's 12 songs on it, it's like 70 minutes long or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know if an album like that needs to be that long unless it's a double album. I know we're in like the CD era, and people were like going real crazy in the '90s on like how long can you fit songs on a CD? Like even the later Michael Jackson albums were that way, and I, I wasn't as big a fan of those as like this, Bad and Thriller and Off the Wall, which were much shorter albums. But back to Genesis, this song, I guess I can get the appeal, but I just thought this song was a boring, over long slog to get through.
I actually really like this song. Now, I will say, I see where you're coming from. At this point, I don't think this is really the Genesis that people wanted to hear at this time because it's got the proggy elements, but they're doing it in the '90s style. I feel kind of like what you're saying. There's another song on this album that embodies that a lot better than this one, but I still really like this song. I love the guitar at the beginning of boom boom boom, and there's kind of like the shaker in the background. It's telling the story of a man who had to leave his family to go work on the railway and like almost died just trying to get the railway built and digging through a mountain and all this stuff. And it's got a happy ending because he gets to go back to his family at the end after several years. But man, I love the part where he goes, "Can you hear me?" When it gets to that part and it's kind of more rocking. And then there's a part where it's literally sounds like they're building the railway right then and there. Like you hear like sounds of like shoveling sand and stuff. I think that's really cool. And I love the driving the last spike. Do 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 do. And then I think one of the coolest parts is when they go, "You'll never see the likes of us again." I love that part. But it's a really cool song, and if you're wanting to shy away from this album because maybe you don't like I Can't Dance or Jesus He Knows Me, maybe check out this song because maybe you might like this one. Definitely check out Fading Lights, but we're gonna save talking about that one for later. But I really did like this song. If you do have a record, because there are record copies of this, it's time to flip the record over. If you're listening on CD, let's take a moment and pause for all of those who have to flip the record over.
Okay, Tom Petty.
Okay, now you got the reference. Good,
I did.
good.
I have the album.
Okay, yeah, I have the album, but I have the record copy, so he doesn't say it on that
I had
because
the
we have to
I
flip
had
the
the
record.
CD copy, so that's how I knew the reference.
I knew it because I listened. It still has it on streaming. But anyway, uh, I can't dance.
So this is the one song I knew going in. Um, Now I've seen some articles and even some videos on Genesis, and people have different opinions. Now, those that really don't like the later period of Phil Collins era Genesis, I've heard some people say this is the worst Genesis song that I've ever heard. And you know what I say to that? I say "fooey." I've always loved this song, even when I first heard it. I think I first heard it on a radio station somewhere. Uh, Man, I just thought this was a great hit single for Genesis. Of course, you got the great drumming. I love Phil's vocal work in the chorus. The I can't dance, I can't talk. Like, who doesn't love Phil Collins when he belts out like that? Like, that's awesome. And even this is another satire song. Like, Jesus He Knows Me was poking fun at televangelists. This one was poking fun of like models in the music industry. Like, people like were like fixated on these good looking people that have like and who have the talent to dance, but that's all they got. And you got people like Phil who's like, I'm not that. I can't compete with I can't compete with like your George Michaels and your Vanilla Ice. I'm just Phil. I think there's some clever satire in the song. I know the video kind of pokes fun at that as well. I've seen clips of that. I think it's a brilliant song. Like I think people just think, oh, this just feels like a brainless Phil Collins song because he's singing, I can't dance, I can't sing. Clearly, he can sing. So it's like, what's the point of this song? But There's a deeper meaning behind it, and the song is brilliant. This one's in my top five.
I love this song. I love this song. So you were talking about the video earlier. If you think the video for Jesus He Knows Me is gonna be funny, this one's even funnier. Like all the videos for this one are hilarious. First off, you got that iconic walk that they do, like that's one of the most iconic moments in Genesis history. Whenever they do that funny little walk, and Phil Collins goes to a bar where this tough guy steals everyone's pants. That's actually the video. You gotta see it to believe it. It's amazing. It's this guy, instead of beating people up, he just steals everyone's pants. And he like loses at pool, and the tough guy steals his pants. But anyway, another funny thing is watching them do this song live. They seem like they're having a blast every time they play this live. They play this song live at all their concerts still. It's one of the songs they save for later in the set list because I can tell that all three of them love playing this one. First off, if you watch it back in like 1992, right after it came out, Phil Collins will get up and he'll do that funny walk while he's singing it. And then while he's doing it, the other members of the band, other than Tony Banks, will come behind him and start doing it behind him. Like Mike Rutherford will, but Mike Rutherford is still playing the guitar while he's doing it. And then like um, Chester Thompson, the touring drummer, he'll come behind and start doing that. And Daryl Sturmer, the guitar player, the another one of their touring musicians, they'll start doing it. But the best part is Tony Banks because, and that's going to lead into my review of the song. Watching Tony Banks play the keyboard part to this song is hilarious. Just as hilarious as the music video for it. Because the keyboard part to this song is the sound effects. You know, all the those are all sounds that he has loaded onto his keyboard. And Tony Banks, every time he plays the keyboard, this is the same guy who did stuff like In the Cage, uh, Cinema Show, all these great synthesizer solos. The same guy is up there with a straight face, like he's playing Cinema Show, going, and it's amazing to watch. I'm like, how do you play that with a straight face? And especially when Phil's up there going with his mullet, and like, I think they'll even sometimes walk past him and smirk at him. It's amazing to watch. But anyway, we start with those funny sound effects that Tony Banks is playing, and then Mike Rutherford, he got this really cool guitar. Boom, doo, 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 doo. Hot sun beating down, burn my feet and touch the ground. Really great vocals. Know something funny? I think Phil Collins sounds kind of like the original AC/DC singer Bon Scott on this song a little bit. I don't know. I don't know why that comparison came to my mind, but he kind of does in this song. And then the chorus. That is going to get stuck in your head for I don't know how long. I can't dance. I can't talk. Only thing about me is the way that I walk. And the lyrics are satirical. This song is just great. It's a guilty pleasure because I didn't know that a lot of people hated this song. I don't know why, because it's fun. But every time I hear it, if I'm standing up, I got to start doing the walk. In fact, I bought a portable CD player, and the first thing I did is I put my We Can't Dance CD in, popped my headphones on, and started listening to I Can't Dance and doing the walk around the room with my portable CD player. This song is great. It's in my top five. All right, the next song, Never a Time.
Never a time. All right. This one, it's almost a ballad type song. There's a couple of those on the album. There's another one we'll get to that I thought was even better than this. This one was just an okay ballad. I like some of the guitar work. I don't have as much to say on this one. Like to me, it was just an okay placement on the album. It's lower on my song ranking, but it's an okay song for what it is.
So you know how you were mentioning earlier about CDs and them putting as many songs as possible when they don't have time constraints?
Yeah,
This is Filler Collins.
Killer Collins.
There's a lot of songs on here that are just bland adult contemporary songs, and this is one of them. I do not remember very much about this song, and if they had taken a few of the songs off and made the album shorter, it honestly, that's the biggest gripe I have about this album. There are some fantastic songs, but there's like two or three songs that I'm like, do they really need to put this on here? Like, they probably had some B-sides that were better than this that could have made this album A. B. Take this song off, draw more attention to the better songs you have with this record, and it could I would have actually thought this is one of your best albums. Like, I love this album, but the length and some of these songs that just aren't as interesting really kind of hurt the score for me. It's still going to be a great score, but songs like this are the biggest problem I have with this album. Trim the fat off the steak, metaphorically. Next. Dreaming While You Sleep.
All right. Yeah, this is another one I really liked. Really loved the drumming on this song. It almost felt like almost has like an African type beat to it, which was really cool. It's a lengthy song, yeah, it's like 7.5 minutes, I think, but I still found the song interesting. Uh, you hear a title like "Dreaming While You Sleep." There's almost kind of a creepy vibe to it. So I'm surprised this didn't end up in one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, if I'm being honest, because that would like I don't know if people would have taken the song seriously if that was the case, because they're like, Genesis, that band that does the cheesy songs like I Can't Dance, but that would have been a cool choice if that was the case. But this, I would say this one's another honorable mention on the album. I do really like this one.
This is a really cool atmospheric song. This is one of the good ones. I really like it. I love the kind of the drum beat feel. And it's kind of an ethereal feel to this song, kind of like you're in a dream. And I really like the vibe that it puts out. The next song is Tell Me Why. And no Backstreet Boys references, please.
Tell me why. I'm sorry. um, this is another one of those topical songs that I was talking about earlier, much like No Sign of Mine. This one is just Phil. I think I'm just gonna say angry Phil Collins because he's like,
Yeah.
people are homeless. There's war going on. Why is this happening? And that's all the song is. And I don't have a problem with songs like these, but this one just felt very shallow to me. This is one of the to me this is like my second to least favorite song on the album behind was it Driving the Last Spike. Like I applaud I appreciate him for trying to stick the landing with something like this, but I don't know. Something about this song just seemed very off to me. I don't know about if it was the whole point about I think there was one part in the chorus where he like implies that God doesn't listen to people suffering, and I'm like, um, you might want to elaborate on that a little bit more than just go something along that line, but okay. Like yeah, the production on it's pretty good, but I feel I feel about this song the same way as I do with John Lennon's Imagine. I mean, there's an admirable attempt to do something with what you're trying to do with your message, but I still think both songs are very problematic for a lot of reasons.
Jason's not gonna like that. This is his favorite song on the album.
Oh wow.
For me, it's kind of just middle of the pack. This isn't like any of the kind of more boring songs like Never a Time. But it's not one of my favorites either. It's all right. I do kind of like the feel of the song, the Tell Me Why. With the kind of the I guess is Tony Banks's synthesizer making it sound kind of like horns, or is it an actual horn section on this song? I don't know. But I like that sound. It's got kind of an almost soul kind of a feel to it, and I like that about it. The next song, Living Forever.
This one I really liked. This one is in my top five. I love Phil Collins drumming, like always. This one, the drumming almost sounds almost jazz-like, which I thought was really cool. And this is another very satirical song, making fun of the whole culture that was prominent then. I guess it's still prominent now, where it's like you gotta take this pill to lose weight, and you gotta eat this to lose weight. And so it's poking fun of the fact that people are hyping up these drugs and weight loss supplements to live forever on Earth. And even though that's impossible because you live and you die. So there's a satire on that. There's like at least three satire songs on this album, which is really crazy. But I think that's the thing I love about Genesis, like especially on this album. Like there's some interesting variety on here. Like you got your proggier songs, you got your satire songs, you got your topical songs, and yet this album is still very unique in a lot of ways. And you even got your adult contemporary ballads on there. Um, I do really like this one. It ends on this really awesome Tony Banks keyboard solo that ends the song. And I'm like, man, this feels like I know this is Genesis in the 90s, and they sounded pretty good in the 90s, at least on this album. But it's cool that Tony Banks is, at least on two songs, has really cool synth solos that feel like uh, the stuff that he was doing back in the 70s, like on the cinema show, for instance. I'm like, yeah, this is really awesome.
I think one of the reasons that I prefer Phil Collins as the frontman to Genesis over Peter Gabriel, even though anyone who's watching, I like both of them, FYI. I just prefer Phil Collins a little bit more. One of the reasons is I think Phil Collins's lyrics are a lot more real. Like Phil writes about real stuff. Peter Gabriel writes stuff like Bob the Knob got smacked on his glob and whatever the heck Supper's Ready is. Which
Yeah.
is why I prefer Peter Gabriel as a solo artist because some of his solo work is very serious, much like the lyrics that Phil Collins are writing for some of the stuff like this. Especially like you look at stuff like Salisbury Hill, which is autobiographical of Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis, or um, something like In Your Eyes. That song is amazing. But Phil Collins wasn't afraid to tackle issues that he saw going on at the time, and this song is kind of going on about fads. This is a song about fads. I will say this is kind of borderline filler Collins, borderline, but this one definitely sticks out a lot more than Never a Time, especially that drum intro. That um, the drumming is a lot more jazz inspired. Phil Collins was even in a jazz band called Brand X. Whenever he first was in, whenever he was first getting started with Genesis, he also was in a jazz band called Brand X. So if you like jazz and you like Phil Collins, if you want to hear Phil Collins do jazz, check that out. But this song is more in the okay territory. I think I would put it just a hair lower than Tell Me Why. Okay. The next song is another one of our singles, and that is Hold On My Heart.
All right, so this is the second adult contemporary style ballad on here after Never a Time. I thought Never a Time was just okay. This one made my top five. I thought this was a great ballad. Reminded me a little bit of One More Night in his solo career.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think it's as good as One More Night. One More Night's a more memorable song, but man, it's great that Genesis did this style in their career. It's cool that it was released as a single. I didn't know that going in. And I think it's a really good ballad. You got the drumming on there, you got some good keyboard on there. Phil's vocal work is excellent. I think it's a really beautiful love song. I can see why. I think I read this was a number one hit on the adult contemporary chart. I can see why, that side of people that listen to that style of music really latched onto this song because I think it's one of the better songs on the album.
So this song was inspired by the famous songwriter Burt Bacharach. In fact, Bacharach was even the working title for this song. Oddly enough, the person who wrote this song was not Phil Collins, it was Tony Banks. So if you're saying Phil Collins is the one who makes it the nope, this was Tony Banks. So shut up. Um, but this is one of my favorite songs on the album. I love this song. I love this song. It's such a beautiful song. The lyrics are so touching. Um, Phil has feelings for somebody, but he's been hurt before, so he knows that if he says his feelings, that there's a chance that he could rush in and it's not going to work out. So he's telling his heart to hold on and wait for the right moment to tell her. And man, it just hits so hard every time, especially when he goes, "Don't let her see you crying." I'm like, man, Phil, like, I think Phil wrote the lyrics. I think Tony did the music and Phil did the lyrics to this one. But Phil's lyrics are just spectacular on here. Tugs at all the right heartstrings. I love the chords. The chords of this song are just so unusual for a song of this style. And of course, we got to thank Tony Banks for that. Um, Tony Banks is a master of using unusual chords in a really great way. I love the guitar at the beginning. Whenever it goes, you get that drums, the do 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 bum bum ba da bum bum. As soon as that starts up and the chords start playing, they kind of these jazzy chords at the beginning. I'm just like, wow, that's so good. Like when I've listened to this CD, there's been times where I just get like 15 seconds into the song and I just start the song over. So I got to hear that intro again. Let's hear that again. Do 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 bum bum ba da. I'm like, not only are the lyrics to this song great, but this song is just a vibe. You can just vibe to this song. This was my favorite song on the album at one point, but there's another song that overtook its place, which we will. I'll say which one it is when we get into my ranking there. But this song, expect it to rank very high. All right. The next song on this album is "The Way of the World."
Way of the World. Man, this is another great song on the album. This has uh, this has some great chords in it. I don't normally don't like talking about chords. I'm not that musically minded, I guess. Even though I played piano and I was in the band in high school, but now I just listen to music just for the fun of it. But man, this is like one of the peppiest songs on the album. Probably one of the more joyful songs on the album. I look at the album cover, which looks like a father lecturing his son. I guess if you have a dark mind, you might say that's a reflection of No Son of Mine. But I looked at the album cover. I think it's a reflection of this song. A father lecturing his son about everyday life and how the world revolves around different things, what's right and what's wrong, the sun's being up and the sky being blue.
Good, because I always thought it was "No Son of Mine."
Oh wow.
In fact, I think it was. I think that is what it's supposed to be because the original name for this album I think was "No Son of Mine," and
Wow.
the single uses the same picture. So
Oh, so I, I might have messed that up. I thought this when I was listening to the song and I was looking at the album cover. I'm like, this is Way of the World. All right, this is a great song.
that I like that interpretation, but
But
I don't know which picture goes with then. If you get the vinyl version, which there is one, each of the inner sleeve has picture or the gatefold or one of the two has pictures for each of the songs. So I might have to look up and see which song that picture is for.
uh, but
Let's see.
but But with all that, this is another song I really like on the album. Just close to making my top five. It's another great song, but it's a really strong honorable mention. I love the chorus. The way and the world.
Okay. Well, there's no son of mine, but it's just a kid. Where is Way of the World? There's a picture of the. It's just a picture of a world. Okay. Well, that didn't really help. Okay, it could be either one. Okay. Way of the World. How many Genesis songs can you name that got swing? Not very many, but this is one of them. I like the kind of the swing feel to the ba ba da 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 ba da. It's just the way of the world. I really like this song. This is one of the more underrated songs on this album. I don't know if it's going to be in my top five, but of all the kind of the non-hits on this album, I think this is probably the best of them. And now we are going to get to Since I Lost You, which I have some background on this song, if you want to know about it.
Uh, I looked a little bit in the background, but I'll let you talk more in depth on that since you called dibs on it already. Um, yeah, this is another song I liked on the album. I thought this was a very touching song, reflecting on the background that you're about to talk
You can talk
about.
about it if you want.
Well, let's just say it's not involving him. It's about his best friend, one of his closest friends. I'll just save it for when you talking about it.
We have a connection with Tears in Heaven.
Very much so. But yeah, I really like this one. It's probably in the middle of my song ranking, but I thought it was a very well crafted song. I do highly respect it a lot.
So this was around the time that Eric Clapton's son died, and so Phil Collins wrote this song to kind of comfort Eric Clapton about his lost son. I will say though, why does it sound like a Christmas song?
Wow.
I don't think the lyrics go with the song, honestly speaking. This is also kind of more that filler Collins stuff. Like the meaning behind the song is the only reason I kind of like this song. I like that. But if not, this sounds like some kind of Phil Collins knockoff Christmas song. Because there are even like sleigh bells in the background, and it just kind of the cheesy. Oh no, what was it like? It's been so long since I lost you and stuff like that. I'm like, if you just change the word to "It's been a long time since I saw Santa," this would be a Christmas song. This would be Phil Collins' Christmas song.
Yeah, yeah, you could have. Yeah, Phil Collins didn't really do a Christmas song unless you count the drumming he did on the Band Aid song. Do they know it's Christmas?
True.
But man, if it wasn't writing this song about Eric Clapton's son, he could have done a Christmas song on this. Uh, it's been a while since I've seen Santa Claus. It's been.
Anyway, if we're going to talk about who wrote the better song for the loss of Eric Clapton's son, Clapton himself did a much better job with Tears in Heaven. Listen to that.
Yeah, Tears in Heaven's great.
Man, that's a sad song.
Oh yeah, it is.
Anyway, Since I Lost You, not one of my favorites on this album. But the next one, Fading Lights.
Ooh, so this is the second 10-minute long song on the album. I wasn't too big on Driving the Last Spike. I was bored by that one. Not so much with Fading Lights. If this is a, I don't think this was written to be Phil Collins' swan song from Genesis because I think he announced his departure a couple years after the album came out. I think after they did the tour, if I remember correctly. But man, this does feel like a swan song all the same because it's a 10-minute song. It feels like a callback to prog era Genesis back in the 70s. And even the song structure, like the way Phil Collins sings the song, uh, lyrically, it's very reminiscent of something like Ripples, which that's one of my favorite Genesis songs. So That's a
Funny you
big
mentioned
plus.
that. There's another connection to ripples in the
It-
song.
there's a I mean, Ripples is one of my favorite Genesis songs. That's a big plus there. This feels like uh, a great grand farewell to a legacy, even though it wasn't intended that way. It was just the epic closer on the album at the time. But the thing I love the most about this song is actually the jam session in the middle of this song. You have about probably 5 minutes or so where you got like Phil Collins going all out drumming. You got some great guitar work from Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks killing it again with a killer keyboard solo. If you thought that solo was awesome on Living Forever, man, it's like times 10 on this song. This one is so good. It's like probably, I mean, again, going back to the cinema show, it harkens back to some of the extended solos he had on songs like The Cinema Show and Supper's Ready. And it's some incredible stuff that he does on this song that it just really floored me. This is one. Um, this one's definitely in my top five. It's definitely one of their best closers to any album. I thought this was awesome.
So Tony Banks said that whenever he was writing this song, that he pretty much knew that it was going to be Phil's last album with the band because of his solo success and just the way things were going. Even though he didn't announce it till after, he said he just kind of knew. So that's kind of why he wrote the lyrics in this particular fashion. Um, and because of that, it does make a very good swan song to Phil Collins' tenure with the band. And honestly, to the band itself, because after this, the next album is dead to me. No Phil Collins or Peter Gabriel. Why would anybody even want to listen to that next album? I mean, I haven't even heard it. I'll give it. I'll try to give it a fair chance. But it's like this is just like the perfect final Genesis song. It's the perfect way to say goodbye. You start out with the drum machine, which Genesis was the first band to ever use a drum machine on Duchess. You get the drum machine there at the beginning, and then Tony Banks's keyboards come in. Phil Collins, it's kind of like just the drum machine, the keyboard, and Phil singing for a little bit. The chorus, it's Ripples. It's the same melody as Ripples. I don't know if it was intentional or not to harken back to that because that was kind of that was apparently I think that was one of the first singles they released after Phil Collins was the lead singer. But it's very similar at least. Ripples is sail away, away, and then Fading Lights is far away, away, fading distant. Or wait, no, I think I changed the. Just I think I'm thinking more of it, but it's like da 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 na 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 na. Like that's it's very similar to Ripples. But then what really makes this song special is that middle section. As soon as Phil steps up to the kit and starts playing, you're like, yeah. Genesis decided they wanted to jam one last time before they switched it up, we'll say. And man, even though this has like more of a 90s production, you're back there and we're back in 1976, Trick of the Tail. Phil Collins is really drumming his heart out, and the big MVP, of course, is Tony Banks. That keyboard solo, my goodness. I've said it before, I think Tony Banks is the best keyboard player. I mean, there's some other guys who are pretty close, like Rick Wakeman from Yes. Of course, Keith Emerson. Like those guys are both geniuses. But I don't know, something about Tony Banks. Like what he does in the keyboard solo in here is super cool. And then Mike has a little guitar thing after that. Check out live versions though. Mike's guitar solo on the live versions is actually even better than what he plays on the studio version. I kind of feel like he's playing a little restrained on this studio recording, but he's able to expand a little bit when they do it live. But then it kind of goes back into the ballad section, and the lyrics do kind of just seem like it's the end, like it's just fading away. These distant lights are burning out. When I first listened to this, because it had been a long time since I'd listened to this album, but when I listened to this earlier this year for the first time in a while, I got a little emotional listening to it. I was like, this is the last Genesis Phil Collins song. And it was just like, I don't remember this being this good. I really don't remember this being this good. Like, you got all the great musicianship here, this amazing ballad. This is everything I want in a Genesis song. Great song. This is one of my favorite Genesis songs, period, not just from this album. It's so good. All right, top five.
Top five. Let me pull my list up real quick.
I'm gonna have to make my list.
All right. Um, I actually have four honorable mentions because I really like this album overall. Dreaming While You Sleep, Since I Lost You, Way of the World, and No Son of Mine were honorable mentions on this album. Number five, Hold On My Heart. Number four, Living Forever. Top three is tricky, but I think I'm going to do number three, Fading Lights. I want to put that as my number one, but there's two that's resonating with me just a little bit more. Number two, I'm going I Can't Dance. Number one, Jesus, He Knows Me. I love that one.
It's a good choice. Jesus He Knows Me is gonna be my honorable mention. Number five is going to be Driving the Last Spike. Number four is I Can't Dance. Number three, No Son of Mine. Number two, Hold On My Heart. And number one, Fading Lights. All right. Well, what are you going to give this lovely album here on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, there's a couple songs I wasn't as big on. And I do think the album's a little too long, but the highs on this album are still really good. Um, this is, I would say, an underrated Genesis album. It's not near as strong as Invisible Touch, but still a really good Genesis album in its own right. So, with all that, I'm still going to give it a 9 out of 10 for all the highs on it.
I'm going to give it a 9 as well. I think that it's got some really underrated tracks on here, especially Fading Lights. That one is killer. And all of the songs that people just needlessly hate on, I'm like, no, they're good songs. So it's a good album and honestly kind of an underrated album. Right, well, that is going to conclude, oh, all of the Genesis albums with Phil Collins. Wow. Phil Collins hasn't been absent from a Genesis album since Trespass. That's crazy. We got one more album to go over, and that is Calling All Stations. I'm a little nervous about that one, especially with it being the last album in their discography, but hey, we gotta do it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time with the Calling All Stations review. In the meantime, remember music is art, art is expression, and I can't dance. See you later.